I moved into this house to escape the noise, to finally find peace after years of city chaos. The first month was bliss quiet mornings, birdsong, and a cup of coffee on the porch. It felt like I had finally carved out my little corner of calm in the world. Then one morning, that calm cracked. I opened my front door and stopped dead. The porch was covered in soil, thick, dark, damp clumps of it scattered across the wooden boards like someone had overturned a garden bed in the middle of the night. But there were no flower beds nearby. I didn't own a single potted plant. I lived alone, and no one had any reason to be on my property, especially not in the dead of night. I stood there for a minute, staring, trying to make sense of it. Maybe a dog had dug something up and tracked dirt here. Maybe the wind had carried it from somewhere. That seemed like a stretch, but it was better than imagining something worse. Shrugging it off, I grabbed a broom and swept it away, making a mental note to check the porch again tomorrow. It wasn't until the next morning that things started to feel off. Same time. Same scene. Fresh soil. Again. This time. It was thicker, heavier. The smell was stronger, too, not just earthy, but metallic, like wet iron. The kind of smell you find deep in the woods after it rains, when the ground feels like it's been undisturbed for centuries. I bent down to touch it. Cold, damp, definitely fresh. There hadn't been any storms, no work crews, no explanation. I told myself it was probably an animal again, raccoons maybe. But even as I thought it, I didn't believe it. The way the soil was spread out almost deliberately, it didn't look random. It looked placed. That night I hardly slept. I kept listening for sounds outside, branches snapping, gravel crunching, anything. But the night was silent, and the next morning, the soil was back, heavier, with streaks running toward the door like someone had been dragging something. I stood in the doorway, broom in hand, too unsettled to move. The air smelled thick, richer, like it had come from somewhere deep underground. The pattern was impossible to ignore now. It was happening every night, and whatever was leaving the soil behind wasn't leaving tracks. Just that rich, black dirt. No footprints. No signs of struggle. No sign of life at all. The following night, I installed a motion sensor light. I needed proof. I needed to catch whatever it was. I angled the sensor directly toward the porch, then went to bed feeling a little better, finally taking some control. But when I opened the door the next morning, I nearly dropped my coffee. The soil was there, again, piled thicker than ever. So thick it was starting to cover the edges of the door frame. The motion light never triggered. That's when I knew I wasn't dealing with an animal, or wind, or some kid playing a prank. Something else was happening, and whatever it was, it wanted to be noticed. The soil had started to seep into my dreams. I'd jolt awake in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, heart racing with the phantom scent of wet dirt clinging to my nostrils. It was becoming more than just a nuisance. It was starting to feel like a warning, or worse, a countdown. I spent that morning scrubbing the porch clean again. My knuckles were raw from gripping the broom so tight. I even hosed the boards down, hoping to wash away the earthy residue that never seemed to fully disappear. But as I watched the muddy water swirl and run off into the grass, I realized something. I couldn't do this alone anymore. Maybe someone in the neighborhood had seen something. Maybe this had happened before. That afternoon, I walked next door to talk to Mrs. Pelham, an older woman who'd lived on the street for decades. She was trimming her rose bush, a sun hat shading her wrinkled face. I greeted her, smiled, tried to sound casual. Hi, sorry to bother you, but have you ever had issues with, dirt or soil showing up on your porch? Her hand stopped mid-snip. The silence was sudden and sharp. She didn't look at me, just muttered, "No, dear," and went back to her pruning. But her movements had changed, sharper, quicker, like she was trying to end the conversation. I pressed a little more. It's just I've been waking up to piles of it every day. Fresh, like it's been dug up somewhere nearby. She stiffened. Then, without looking at me, she said, "Sometimes things are best left buried," and turned her back. That night, I sat on my porch long after the sun went down. a cup of coffee, cooling in my hands. The motion light stayed silent. My flashlight battery was full. I even had my phone's camera app open, ready to record. But all I heard was the occasional owl hoot and the distant hum of crickets around midnight. I saw movement across the street. Mr. Thompson, late 70s, wiry, always wearing the same beige cardigan, was standing at the edge of his yard, staring. In my direction, I waved. He didn't move. Just stood there like a statue, watching. I called out, "Mr. Thompson?" Still nothing. After a long pause, he finally turned and started to walk back toward his house. But before he disappeared behind his hedges, he called out just loud enough for me to hear, "You shouldn't have bought that place." I froze. He hadn't said it with malice. It sounded sorrowful. The next evening, just as I was heading back, inside, I heard his voice again. He had crossed the street this time, standing a few feet from my porch, eyes darting nervously. "I shouldn't be here," he whispered. "But someone needs to warn you." I stepped closer. "Warn me about what?" He looked around as if afraid someone was watching. "There are things under this street. Things that were never meant to be disturbed. That house," he glanced at my door. "They said they moved the graves, but they didn't. Not all of them." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What do you mean?" He took a shaky breath. "Before your place was built, this land was part of a cemetery. Old, forgotten. They built over it houses, sidewalks, mailboxes that the ground remembers. Every now and then, it reminds us." I didn't know what to say. He looked me dead in the eyes. "If I were you, I wouldn't go digging. No matter what you hear, no matter what you find." Then he turned and left, his words hanging in the air like a curse. That night I barely slept, because now I knew the soil wasn't just random. It was coming from somewhere, and maybe it wanted out. I spent the next morning staring at the porch like it was a murder, fresh soil. Again thicker, now darker, with streaks trailing up the door like muddy fingers had clawed their way up the wood in the night. I didn't even bother cleaning it this time. I just stood there, staring, heart pounding, trying to convince myself this was still explainable. But it wasn't. I knew it now. Something was coming from beneath Mr. Thompson's. Warning replayed in my mind like a broken record. They didn't move all of them. After a while, I called my friend Mike. He wasn't the superstitious type. I figured if anyone could give me a rational perspective, tell me I was being paranoid, it'd be him. Mike showed up around 6 p.m. with a thermos of coffee and a brow furrowed with skepticism. "Soil ghosts?" He joked as I led him to the porch. The smile died on his face the moment he saw the mess. "Jesus," he muttered, "that's not normal." We stayed up late that night, armed with flashlights and an old thermal cam Mike had from his amateur ghost hunting phase in college. We watched the porch from the living room window, both of us trying to stay awake through the quiet, endless darkness. Then, around 2:45 a.m., we heard it. A soft shuffling sound, barely audible, like something being dragged through wet leaves. Mike's eyes met mine. We both stood up slowly, not wanting to break the silence, and crept toward the door. I reached for the knob. The shuffling stopped. I flung the door open and found nothing but stillness. And more soil. But this time, it wasn't just scattered, it was shaped. A long, narrow ridge of soil stretched across the porch, like a fresh grave. And mixed into the center of it were brittle, jagged fragments. Mike bent down to examine them, brushing the dirt away with his fingers. His face turned pale. "Dude, these are bones." I leaned in. Tiny, fragile, bird-sized, but wrong, too thin, too human. "It's probably animal bones," Mike said, but his voice lacked conviction. He knew as well as I did that they weren't, and then we smelled it again. That stench. Damp earth. Metallic rock. Like something had been buried deep for years and was only now reaching the surface. We didn't speak much that night after going back inside. But I noticed how often Mike looked at the floor. The next day. We reviewed the footage from the camera. Mike had mounted above the porch. For the first few hours, nothing happened. Just the static hum of empty night. Then, at 2:57 a.m., the screen glitcad dot, just for a second. And when it returned to normal, the soil was there, dot. It didn't fall from above. Didn't get tracked in. It appeared from beneath like it was rising, up between the cracks and the wood. It spread slowly, pulsing outward, as if it were breathing. Mike paused the video. Tell me that's not natural. He whispered. I couldn't. I started digging into the history of the house, that afternoon scouring. County records, land deeds, anything. And it didn't take long to find the truth. My house, along with most of the block, was built on the grounds of what used to be St. Agnes Cemetery, a 19th century burial ground relocated during suburban development, but there were inconsistencies, gaps in the records. Some bodies had never been exhumed. Some graves had never even been marked. It had all been paved over. Forgotten. Until now. That night, I didn't sleep because I knew what was happening. The soil wasn't just rising. It was remembering, and it wasn't going to stop. I didn't tell Mike everything I found. Not right away. I didn't want to scare him off. Because deep down, I knew I couldn't face this alone anymore, but I think he already suspected the worst. We were sitting in. My living room later that night, him on the edge of the couch, me pacing like a man waiting for a verdict. The house was quiet. Too quiet? Even the usual creaks and groans of old wood had stopped. Like the place was holding its breath. Mike finally broke the silence. What are you thinking? I hesitated. I think we need to dig. He blinked at me. You mean like under the porch? I nodded. If something's buried there, we need to see it. He didn't argue. He didn't call me crazy. That's when I knew he was scared too. We waited until the sun went down, then went outside with shovels, flashlights, and a lingering sense of dread. The porch boards were already loose, weathered and warped like they wanted to be removed. We pried them up one by one until we had a wide enough opening to dig. The first few inches were just regular dirt. Then came the smell. Putrid, wet, like a rotting cellar full of mold and old blood. It hit us in a wave, making both of us gag. We pushed on anyway, the beams from our flashlights shaking as we worked. The deeper we dug, the worse it got. The soil wasn't just damp, it felt alive, heavy in a way that didn't make sense. Like it was resisting us. Then Mike's shovel struck something hard. The hollow thud echoed through the ground, like a muffled scream. We dropped to our knees and clawed at the dirt with our hands until we revealed it rotting wood, splintered and blackened, half swallowed by the earth. A coffin, old, cracked open slightly at the top. Mike whispered, "Oh God." Inside were bones, not arranged like a skeleton should be, but twisted, jumbled, fingers curled upward like they died clawing at the lid. I leaned closer, and that's when I saw them. The marks, scratched lines, dozens of them. Deep gouges along the inside of the coffin, as if whoever had been buried there was still alive. When they went in, the temperature dropped so suddenly that I could see my breath. It was summer. My sweat had gone cold. Then came the whispering. At first, impossible to tell where it was coming from, but growing louder, clearer, let us out. We scrambled back, dirt flying behind us, but the ground was shifting beneath our feet, like something was moving just below the surface. I could feel it pulsing, rising. The soil began to pour back into the hole faster than it should have, like it wanted to cover what we'd uncovered. I shouted, "Cover it up! Cover it now!" But Mike was frozen, staring at the skeletal hand that had pushed up through the soil. It twitched. Not from gravity. Or shifting dirt. It moved on its own. I grabbed the boards we'd pulled up and slammed them back down, hammering with the back of my fist. The whispering grew louder, angry, now screeching words in voices that didn't sound human. Just before I nailed the last board in place, something screamed beneath us, a sound that made my ears ring and my chest seize. Up in terror. Then silence. The ground stilled. The air stopped moving. We staggered back inside, barely able to breathe. Covered in dirt and shaking like we'd been through a war. Mike sat in silence for a long time. Then finally, without looking at me, he said, "I don't want to come back." Here. I didn't blame him, but I wasn't going anywhere. Because I knew deep down, we hadn't sealed anything. We just made it angry. Mike didn't answer my calls after that night. I couldn't blame him. What we unearthed wasn't something you could explain away with logic or science. Something had been buried under my house for a very long time, and now it was stirring. I tried to act normal the next day. Tried to sweep the porch again, even though the soil was piling thicker. But I noticed something new, tiny streaks of rust-colored fluid dripping down the doorframe. Like the wood itself was bleeding, the soil had begun to crust, darker and more dense, like it had aged 100 years in just one night. The stench was unbearable now. I could smell it from inside the house, even with the doors and windows shut tight. It clung to my skin, to my clothes. No amount of scrubbing could wash it away. But what terrified me most was the sound that it started softly, barely. Audible scratching behind the walls. Then each night it got louder, more urgent, more desperate. It wasn't rats. It wasn't pipes. It was coming from beneath the floors, clawing upward. The soil wasn't the only thing rising anymore. I tried researching ways to bless the house, or to cleanse the land. But everything I read said the same thing. You can't banish what isn't a spirit only. What is dead, whatever was beneath my house. It wasn't gone, that it had been buried alive. That night I heard movement, not shuffling. Not whispering, footsteps, heavy, slow, deliberate steps moving across the porch. Then stopping just outside my front door. I froze, the scratching began again. Now louder, like long fingernails dragging across the underside of the wooden boards. The temperature dropped instantly, my breath turning to mist in front of me. Then something began to push against the front door, soft at first, then harder. I backed away slowly. Heart pounding, eyes locked on the handle as it rattled violently once. Twice, like something wanted in. Or worse, like it belonged there already. The noise stopped as suddenly as it began. But when I dared to approach the door, I saw it. The word beneath carved into the wood, jagged and uneven, as if scratched. And with fingers or bone, I stumbled back. The air felt like it was thick with static. The lights above flickered and went out, plunging the room into complete darkness. That's when I saw it. From the hallway window, I could make out a shape standing on the porch, not a person. Not fully, it was humanoid in outline, but its limbs were too long, its posture too crooked, as if it had been twisted in the earth for far too long. Its face, or what should have been a face, was buried beneath a thick mask of soil and moss, dripping like it had been dredged straight from the grave. It didn't move. It just stood there, staring at the door, silently, and then it turned its head toward the window. It saw me. I dropped to the floor, heart pounding in my ears. I didn't breathe, didn't blink. I stayed hidden for what felt like hours until the first light of dawn crept through the curtains. When I finally looked outside, the porch was empty again, but this time the soil had made its way inside. Thin line of dirt now stretched across the threshold, curling toward the hallway like a dragging trail. And etched faintly in the grime on the floor were more words. You opened it. I didn't leave the house that day. Didn't open the door. Didn't look out the windows. I sat in the living room with every light on, clutching a fire poker, like it would actually protect me from whatever was now creeping up from the ground. The line of soil that had curled its way inside the night before hadn't stopped at the threshold. It had reached across the living room floor like a finger dragging itself forward. I swept it up, it came back. Worse. It was spreading now, thin. Smears appeared on the walls, on the baseboards, even on the ceiling in the shape of muddy, smudged handprints. I tried cleaning. I tried scrubbing. But it wasn't dirt anymore. It was like the house itself was sweating decay. By nightfall. The air in the house was unbearable, thick, wet, and heavy with rot. My skin felt itchy, like something was crawling just beneath the surface. I could hear noises behind the walls muffled. Groans and deep, gurgling breaths. I had to end it. I couldn't live like this. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't think dot, so I did the one thing Mr. Thompson told me never to do. I dug deeper with every strike of the shovel. The ground beneath the porch seemed to pulse and shift. The earth was looser now, almost like it wanted to be opened. I removed the boards again, hands trembling, and plunged the shovel into the dirt. This time, I didn't stop when I hit the coffin. I dug around it, ripping it open completely. The wood was damp and soft, rotting under my fingers. Inside lay bones. Human. Bones. A full skeleton, arms contorted above its head like it had been reaching for the surface until the moment it died. But there was something else, a second coffin, directly beneath the first. Older, cracked wide open. I reached down, hesitating as the air grew colder and the whispering began clear now. Dozens of voices. Help us. Pull us free. We were buried wrong. I tore at the soil with my bare hands, and then I found it. A face. Pale. Leathery. Shriveled but intact. The eyes opened. I screamed. The thing in the coffin grinned, its mouth parting to reveal a throat filled with soil and shattered bone. Then it moved, jerking up with one hand snapping, out to grab my wrist. Its fingers were strong and possibly strong, yanking me down with it. The soil shifted beneath me, pulling me into the grave like quicksand. I thrashed, kicked, screamed, but the earth swallowed me up to the waist before I felt Mike's hands grab under my arms. He'd come back. Together, we fought the pull. I could feel fingernails, too many of them scratching my legs, trying to drag me deeper. Finally, with one last heave, Mike ripped me free. We fell backward, both of us gasping, and watched as the hole sealed itself, soil rising unnaturally to cover the coffins again. We didn't speak, we just nailed the boards back in place and fled the porch. We didn't sleep that night, Dot. When the morning came, I checked the front door again. The porch was clean, Dot, no soil. No bones, no message, Dot, just the morning sound and silence. But I didn't feel relief. I felt watched. Mike left that afternoon. He didn't say goodbye, just tossed his overnight bag in the car and drove away, like something might follow him if he stayed any longer. I tried to believe it was over, that we'd sealed it shut for good. But then this morning I heard it again, that soft scratching. At the door, I tried to ignore it, but when I stepped outside, I saw it. A thin line of fresh soil, curling across the porch, Dot, this time. The message was shorter. Etched in crooked letters along the base of the doorframe, it read, "We are not done." And I believe them because the ground never forgets, and the dead, they only wait.